Nick, I hope you're doing well. Welcome into the game in Tuscaloosa.
Good to be here, guys.
It is a sister website to AOL.com. Am I right?
Yep. Same company.
Same company. So a lot of the same guys, same thing as you do there covering Michigan. So a lot of the guys that we feature here from AOL.com. But want to dive into maybe your first reaction for the NCAA voting down that satellite camps are no longer going to be happening in college athletics.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think I'm surprised by it. And at the same time, I don't really get it either. You know, I mean, I don't think that the camps were really hurting anyone in particular. I don't know if they were that big a deal. But at the same time, when you've got two leagues, you know, the SEC and the ACC, who pretty passionately pounded the table against it, and then you have the Big Ten, who's led by Jim Delaney, who just shrugs his shoulders and says whatever's going to happen is going to happen. So I mean, that's what happened, and so that's why I'm not really surprised that they killed it. But at the same time, I don't quite understand it. I don't understand why that wasn't something that was just made open to everybody. I know the SEC and the ACC have their rules against it internally, but at the end of the day, I think it hurts the smaller schools who don't have giant budgets more than it hurts the larger schools. So, you know, it is what it is, and we'll see what's next for Jim Harbaugh.
I was actually against Nick Saban on this one. I didn't see where the NCAA could even do it. I'd love to know how they decided why that it's not possible. Like, in other words, what rule were they breaking? That's where I don't understand how they had the leverage to go in and say, hey, we're going to change this rule, because I don't see what the rule was broken. Jim Harbaugh said a couple of weeks ago, I think it was on Dan Patrick, if I'm not mistaken, he said, this is America. We can cross state lines.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. That's what I don't think he understood. That's what I don't think a lot of people up here understood. You know, you're allowed to recruit down there every other time of year. I don't understand. You know, and the one thing though, it always came back to the SEC and the ACC have internal conference rules that prohibit them from having any camps 50 miles away from their own campus. They didn't want to lift that. You know, I think that's more maybe territorial. You know, you guys are down there every day. I'm not. I don't know how territorial it gets, but I mean, that's what it seems like up here in terms of we don't want certain people in our territory. And then from my perspective, Saban, the Saban stuff, I mean, when he comes out and says something against it, he's the most powerful coach down there. And he has, he has the run of the South. I mean, he can walk in anybody's living room, do whatever or get whoever he wants, and rightfully so. And I understood why he was, I don't want Jim Harbaugh down here. I think that, I understood that, but there was a lot of other guys who I think down there, they didn't want to work in June. And I don't think that was the case for Saban. I think it was a strategic move on his part to speak out against it. But there was a lot of guys down there who didn't want to work, and I think that's what it came back to. And that wasn't something that people talked about publicly, but behind closed doors, that was a big concern for a lot of coaches.
Will the perception be around the country, probably in Big Ten country, that Nick Saban has more power, the SEC has more power, they get their way? Will that be the perception of the Big Ten folks?
Yeah, usually it is. Usually it is. To be fair, I don't know how true it is, but if you're talking perception, we know that Nick Saban and Mark Emmert have a relationship. There's a lot of people up here that will cry foul about some stuff Alabama does, or they think that they do, even though there's times where, it's like, you ask, well, where's the proof? But whatever. So perception being what it is, it will be that, the country's most powerful conference got its way, led by the most powerful coach in that conference, while Jim Delaney sort of sat there and didn't do anything. I mean, and that's ultimately what it comes down to. I mean, there was 3 or 4 coaches in this league, Urban Meyer, James Franklin, Harbaugh, I believe Pat Fitzgerald, who were all on board for this, and Delaney just, he never did anything. So ultimately, I think that if the Big Ten members have any real gripe, it might be with their own commissioner, because, at some point he's got to support his league and do more than just kind of sit there and wait for a ruling to come down.
When I watched Nick Saban change the SEC, you talked about working in June. I mean, Nick Saban, you can go by during the offseason. He's there until 10 and 11 o'clock at night. It's crazy. I don't know how the guy does it. I don't know. I mean, I don't know if his wife doesn't allow him to come home prior to a certain time. Or I don't understand why he works these hours that he does. But he changed the culture in the SEC. Can you see in year number 1 Jim Harbaugh changing the culture in the Big Ten and forcing those guys to go out and work longer hours and be more dedicated to winning?
Oh, 200%. I mean, that's exactly what I was just going to say. What Saban did when he got to Alabama was, was basically just say, I'm going to work all day, every day, all year. If the rest of you don't want to, that's fine. We're going to beat you. That's currently that's what Harbaugh does. I mean, the guy he never takes time off. They were planning on doing stuff all of June. They're going to have more camps here than they've ever had before. It's always something, and it's always something that he's doing that other places or other schools in his league aren't. And it forces them to kind of look internally and say, okay, do we really want to do this at this elite high level? And a lot of times there's been programs in the Big Ten for a long time that either they don't have the money or they don't have the stomach to really make a run at it the way that schools in the SEC does, the way that Urban has done it at Ohio State, and the way that Harbaugh is trying to do it here in Michigan. So it's been a challenge for a lot of schools. A lot of schools have had to change, and they have had to adapt, roll with the punches, and figure it out. Because I mean, if he's working every day and you're not, then you're going to get beat, and that's ultimately I think what's happening in some circles of the league.
We're talking to Nick Baumgardner right now. He is mlive.com. You can read his article right now, NCAA Killing the Jim Harbaugh Satellite Camps Effective Immediately. We've sort of titled this like Obamacare, even though it's called Affordable Health Care Act. It's Jim Harbaugh's Satellite Camps. You can read that at mlive.com. But also, I want to ask you about the Big Ten and the SEC. Is the gap closing down on talent level, or is it maintaining about the same when you look at talent difference between the Big Ten and the SEC?
Well, I think in the last, it has a chance here to have a situation where, the top 2 or 3 teams in the Big Ten, Michigan has loaded up more talent in the last year and a half than they've had in previous years. Ohio State's obviously one of the top recruiting teams in the country every year, and Michigan State has gotten a lot better with their recruiting efforts as well. If you look at those 3 teams, you say if those are teams that continue to trend in the direction they're trending, I think those 3 teams can hang with schools in the SEC and not have much of a problem. The bigger issue is the rest of the league. Iowa. I know Iowa had a nice year last year, but you saw what happened when they go to Stanford, or they go play Stanford in the Rose Bowl and just get completely pantsed. They didn't play anybody in league last year. They didn't play Michigan. They didn't play Michigan State. They didn't play Ohio State. So, I mean, some of that was a mirage. Nebraska's having a hard time recruiting. James Franklin is having issues at Penn State. And then you've got, Illinois, Purdue, Indiana, Northwestern. I mean, teams that just, they just don't, and Rutgers. I know Maryland's making a new change. So, really, I think the top level of the league is improving and is catching up with some of those, top-tier teams in the SEC. But what hurts the Big Ten is the rest of it. Minnesota, Iowa, Nebraska. I mean, those teams have to pick up their level and kind of start matching, what the top teams are doing.
Nick, final question. Michigan listed as a Big Ten favorite with a 10-2 record according to that Football Power Index. I'm not sure many people understand that algorithm, but Alabama was listed as a 9-3 team. So if you want to chew on that for a couple of seconds, I don't know if they're talking about 3 losses in 2 years or just 1, but they've got Michigan winning it all in the Big Ten next year. Would you agree with it?
I think that's a tough call. I think it's Michigan or Ohio State. I think Michigan State's had a great run here, and I still think they'll be a really solid team. But Michigan State lost a lot, and doesn't bring in as much. Ohio State lost a lot too, but Ohio State brings in more talent in terms of its guys it's had kind of shelved away on the roster from a recruiting standpoint. So I think I have a hard time putting Michigan over Ohio State right now. Given a lot of things, given Ohio State's talent level, J.T. Barrett's back. Ohio State blasted Michigan here last year in Ann Arbor, and has really owned that series. I think Michigan will be able to climb in front of Michigan State this year. I'm not sure about Ohio State. I mean, that's the one. The one thing, though, that sets up well for Michigan is they've got really only 3 truly difficult games on the schedule. I mean, they have to go to Ohio State, to Michigan State, and to Iowa, all toward the end of the season, the final 5 games. But this team should be able to get out to like a 7-0 start without too much problem. And they have a ton returning, a lot of talent. They're much better in year 2 than they were in year 1 under Harbaugh. So yeah, they'll be in the conversation. I just don't know if they can get through Ohio State.